All right, so I'm talking to Butch Bradley, the legendary Butch Bradley comedian. Uh, was a regular at the Comedy Store. Now is in Vegas, running his own scene there. And you were a key part in the story of Grand Theft Audio, the podcast that became Radio Titans later. And that when we were practicing, me and Jake Belcher and a guy named Mike Nagami, we were all coworkers who had a dream of being in radio together, and we didn't know how to get on the radio because we were in LA, where it's a big city, and usually you have to work your way up for many years from small town America up to a city like that. And we took classes at this shitty radio school called American Radio Network, and then we would practice every Saturday and a little booth there. And we decided, let's start trying to take this out and do this on location, because we thought, what are the odds we're going to get into a real radio booth? It'll pay through the nose. Let's learn how to make shows on the fly. And so one show we did from a House of Pies with, I don't think it was you, it was some other comedians. And then one show we did on a moving bus. We actually hopped on a bus with a driver that thought it was funny. And we did it the way Jimmy Kimmel wound up doing a few years later. He taped an episode of his show on an LA City bus, but Jimmy Kimmel's was bogus because he had a really pre-picked audience of people on the bus. We did it like really like flat out guerrilla style, with real bums and crazies and regular people all mixed together. And we were rolling through from Pasadena to Hollywood and back. And we tried to tape a talk show that way. But the one time you were involved, you were a good friend of mine. You were just starting to make a dent in the comedy scene, and you invited us over to your apartment to tape an interview with you. And so
using the word apartment loosely.
It was what?
Yeah, I said using the word apartment loosely. It was a square box, a studio that Tony Rock and I, cohabited in to survive comedy. And you guys just come rolling in, and I'm like, what are we doing? And I'm like, are we making some weird movie or what? And you guys are like, no, we're going to start doing this on the road. Wherever we go, we're going to just start recording. And who knew that you were like at the beginning of like the podcast revolution takeover,
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of memory about the specifics of that night. I just remember, like, when we were thinking, who are important people to our history? One of the other partners on that, Jake Belcher, said, holy shit, we got to get Butch Bradley, because the bus driver retired and disappeared somewhere in Atlanta. Nobody knows how to find him. And so in House of Pies, who knew, random waitresses, how do we track down somebody? But Butch Bradley, we figured he'd remember what was going on. What was your impression of us aside from that? Did you think we had a creative spark or what?
You guys were so driven, and like, as young comics, we were like all hoping that something would occur. And in you and your crew, it was easy to recognize that you guys were going to do something. Something was happening. I didn't quite understand it, but like, I knew that whatever you guys were up to, you believed in it and you were going to make it happen. And those were the ingredients needed in Hollywood, period, along with your talent and the drive. I mean, you can't make drive. You either have it or you don't. And you guys, I mean, you could have just pretended to record that day, but I believe something cool was happening. And, and it was funny, and it was, it's really interesting to look back on this since you reached out to me, because I realized that is my first experience with the podcast world. It really is. Huh. It really was. And I didn't know it at the time, but you guys were doing what, like, I mean, people, it's just a whole different world now. And you guys were at the forefront in the beginning of all of that. It's pretty cool.
Wow. Well, thanks, man. I think I got what I need there. Hang on. Okay, go ahead.
Yo, that is crazy cool that you have all that footage. You need to get all of that up, because I would watch that. People will watch that. That's got to be, you know, a YouTube channel. It's got to be up. I mean, people are going to watch that. Early Pete Davidson, all these people you had on there is interesting and cool to me. And you know, it's fun for everybody to look back and I mean, who doesn't love that? Watching Netflix and catching a show like that where you're like, oh my God, look at them when, look at them then, look at them when, look at them then. And, you know, it's just killer that you have all that gold footage just sitting. You know, you got to
Well, it's all
mine that
audio.
out and put it up.
Unfortunately, we didn't have video, but we have audio. You know, but we have some video of other things. But it's all audio.
Well, you
know, it's
just run the audio with clips of them performing, man. I mean, that's what I want to see. I want to hear the audio. I mean, it's going to be, it's priceless. You know what I mean? It's precious. You know, there's probably a million little tidbits that those guys had dropped on their way up the ladder. They didn't even know they were going.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks. I'm going to pause it. I'm going to stop right now because I got to get dressed for work. But anyway.
Knock out your day and hit me